Graham Carr has just left his position as head scout at Newcastle United, much to the delight of the Geordies, who were getting tired of the endless parade of foreign flops marched through the doors of St James's Park. The club are about to embark on their first season back in the top flight, but what can they realistically achieve? Let's not forget they finished 5th only 5 years ago. Let's take a look at their starting 11 from the final game of that 11-12 season, a 3-1 defeat at Everton, and see where they are now. Tim Krul. Like so many other names you're about to see in this list, Tim Krul was one of the most coveted men outside the top 4 during the 11-12 season. The Dutchman was in his 4th season with the Magpies, and the highest he had ever finished was 12th. Since then he's made appearances at a World Cup, although he was just wheeled out for penalties against Costa Rica. He's still at the club, but injuries virtually ruled him out of the disastrous 15-16 season, and he spent last campaign taking in loans in the Eredivisie, desperately searching for first team football with both Ajax and AZ Alkmaar. Having returned to St James's Park, will he wrestle back the number 1 spot from Karl Darlow, or is his 12-year stay on Tyneside about to end? James Perch. When James Perch rocked up at Newcastle during the summer of 2010, it's fair to say nobody was clutching the edge of their seats with excitement. However, Perchinho quickly became a fan favourite at St James's Park, not through any amount of skill or talent, but through sheer hard work and a willingness to play anywhere. The original Vernon Anita, he was sold to Wigan in 2013 and then QPR 2 years later. He has not played a single top flight game since leaving St James's Park, and at the age of 31, I wouldn't bet on that changing anytime soon. Mike Williamson. Where Perch was beloved on Tyneside, Mike Williamson was feared, with Geordies cowering every time the man had the ball at his feet. He somehow lasted 6 years at the club, making 150 league appearances, before John Carver accused him of getting sent off on purpose in a 3-0 defeat to Leicester City in May 2015. Probably not the best man management, but sure, that's why he lost nearly every game. He's since struggled with injuries at Wolves and was released at the end of last season at the age of 33. Any takers? Anyone? Fabrizio Collicini. Fabrizio Collicini's 8-year spell at Newcastle is interesting, as it was bookended by 2 horrifically poor spells of form. Perhaps it shows his importance to the side that on both occasions the club were relegated. When he first arrived in the summer of 2008, he spent the season playing as though he was unable to control his feet, and it was a similar story during the 15-16 season under Steve McLaren. The former club captain was finally granted his wish to sign for San Lorenzo last summer, and looks set to see out his playing days there. David Santon. David Santon established himself as a fan favourite on Tyneside when he confirmed that no, he had not actually seen a Mackem in Milan. His first season at the club, after arriving from Inter Milan, couldn't have gone much better, finishing 5th. However, his form tailed off during the next 2 seasons, and he found getting replaced by Paul Dummett a bit too much to bear. So he returned to Inter Milan in February 2015. Santon almost returned to the northeast the following year, with Sunderland having agreed personal terms only for the deal to collapse at the last minute. The Italian barely featured for Inter Milan last season. Didn't Mourinho once compare him to Paolo Maldini? Jonas Gutierrez. Not many supporters knew much about Jonas Gutierrez before he waltzed into St James's Park in 2008, but they knew all about him by the time he'd left in 2015. When fit, he was a virtual ever-present for the Magpies during his time at the club, despite his severe shortage of goals. However, in September 2014, he revealed that he was being treated for testicular cancer. He had spent the final 6 months of the 13-14 season on loan at Norwich City, where he had made little impact. Once he completed his recovery, he made his return to the pitch for Newcastle in March 2015. 2 months later, he scored in Newcastle's final game of the 14-15 season, helping them to cling to their Premier League status by their fingernails. To show their gratitude, I suppose, he was released over the phone a couple of days later. At the age of 33, he's currently in Argentina, with a club named Defensa y Justicia. A fitting name, considering last year he was victorious in a disability discrimination lawsuit against Newcastle, on the basis that by not being selected for the first team due to his diagnosis, he was robbed of an appearance-related bonus. Yohan CABAYE. Graham Carr may have been mocked for a host of poor purchases, and rightly so, but if there's one shining light he can frame above the mantelpiece, or underline in felt pen on his CV, then it's the discovery of Yohan CABAYE. Alright, admittedly he didn't have to look too far. The Frenchman had just won the title with Lille, but his impact at Newcastle can't be understated. The playmaker was a driving force behind their surge for European football. It was all going so well until he downed tools and went on strike in order to force through a move to Arsenal in 2013. Nothing materialised, and he was forced to stick it out for 6 more awkward months, before departing for PSG in a £20 million deal. He spent 18 months in Paris, found opportunities limited, and saw his international place start to slip. So jumped on the first plane back to England in 2015 to reunite with Alan Pardew. Am I the only one who thinks a player of CABAYE's talents could be doing a bit better than Crystal Palace though? CHEICK TIOTE. A sad entry because, as we all know, CHEICK TIOTE was laid to rest this month at the age of 30. The Ivorian, signed in 2010, was the steel in Newcastle's midfield armour and formed a formidable partnership with CABAYE. He spent 4.5 more seasons with the club before signing for Beijing Enterprises in February 2017. His final league game came against Baoding Yingli Yitong, helping the club to a 4-2 win before passing away 2 days later due to a probable cardiac arrest in training. He was laid to rest in Abidjan, Ivory Coast on the 18th of June. HATEM Ben Arfa. HATEM Ben Arfa, Newcastle's French dribbler, was as exciting as he was erratic. His ability to frustrate and delight in equal measure can be summed up by his career post-Newcastle. After it all ended in tears following a bust-up with Alan Pardew, he ended up at Hull City, where he lasted 6 months and barely played. He followed that up with the best season of his career during the 15-16 campaign, netting 18 goals for Nice as they finished 4th, and he secured a move to PSG, where, like CABAYE, he hasn't really done much playing and looks set for another move. Demba Ba will probably always be remembered for one goal in particular, and it's the same one that still gives Steven Gerrard nightmares. His form at Newcastle was excellent though, netting 19 goals in his 18 months on TIOTE. He moved to Chelsea in January 2013, where his opportunities were few and far between. Loic Remy really should have been paying attention. He moved to Besiktas in 2014, where he rediscovered his goal scoring touch with 27 goals in his debut season, before securing a move to Shanghai Shenhua. He went on to bag 29 goals in 37 games, before smashing his leg to pieces last year. He spent the final 6 months of last season on loan with Besiktas. PAPISS CISSE. The Geordies were still salivating over Demba Ba when PAPISS CISSE rocked up in January 2012 to make the other lad look like yesterday's fish and chip paper. Bagging 13 goals in his first 14 games was sensational. Bagging 31 goals in his next 117 games was not. CISSE did develop a knack for important strikes, but the man was born offside and he was finally sold last summer, with Chinese Super League club Shandong Luneng snapping him up for £2.5 million. And the Chinese, with all their wealth, aren't willing to pay more than $3 million for him. I think that tells you all you need to know. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and make sure you check out Footy Feed for all the latest transfer rumours and news.